Thank you.
All right, let's call this meeting in order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, may I have a roll call, please?
Council President Albertson.
Here.
Councilmember Rivera. Here. Councilmember O'Halloran. Here. Councilmember McIrvin.
Here.
Councilmember Prince. Councilmember Perez.
Here.
Councilmember Vaughn. One absent, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move to excuse the absent council member.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to excuse the absent council member. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All righty. First off, we have a special presentation tonight, the post-legislative session update. I believe Eric Perry and David Foster will be presenting as they make their way down the aisle in a very formal fashion.
Ominous as we're coming down the aisle. Huh? He is about to get married, so it's fitting, yeah. Okay. Well, good evening, Council President. Thank you for your time tonight. Eric Perry, Government Affairs Manager for the City of Renton, joined by David Foster, who is the city's contract lobbyist for all work down in Olympia. And to echo what was just said, we are here to present a post-session update on the 2025 state legislative session. So just to kind of jump right into it, we did talk a little bit about this in our pre-session update last fall. So a lot of these numbers should seem very similar to you, but just to recap for maybe members of the audience, we have a new governor here in the state with Governor Bob Ferguson. And then in the House of Representatives, the Democrats picked up one seat and the Democrats conversely lost one seat. And then in the Senate, the same fashion, Democrats picked up one seat and Republicans lost one seat as well. So you'll see the total numbers reflected there on the slide.
I just had, we're going to do a little tag team here, so I'll get in with the color commentary about what was going on as Eric gives the overview. What I just wanted to say on this with regard to this information, a lot of new members. Granted, there were a lot of senators that moved over from the House, so not new to the legislature, but new to the Senate and the process in the Senate. A lot of new House members and a lot of new members that were coming in still even after the session began because of all the changes that occurred. So there was a lot of education that had to take place with the new members on almost every issue. And you had a new governor, you had a number of new statewide elected officials and new staff. So it was an interesting time for the first month or so as the legislature got settled in, the governor and other staff. The governor and his staff got settled in for the session.
To just recap as well, our local representation here in the city of Renton. Renton is lucky to have representation from two legislative districts, the 11th and the 5th, primarily represented by the 11th district, which is comprised of Representative Steve Bergquist, Representative David Hackney, and Senator Bob Hasagawa. In the 5th district, during session up until mid-April, we were represented by Representative Victoria Hunt, Representative Lisa Callan, and Senator Bill Ramos, who unfortunately passed away. And so you'll see kind of these asterisks on here that reflect the new representation within that district, and I'll let David kind of expound upon that a little bit more.
So just a couple of things here. Representative Bergquist moved from his vice chair position on appropriations to become chair of the Early Learning and Human Services Committee. He stayed on appropriations, but not as vice chair. So that was a new role for him, and frankly, to a certain degree, a new issue area that he was involved with. Representative Hackney, as you know, had some medical issues, and so while he was recovering, was able to certainly at the end of session vote remotely on legislation and still remain active. And Senator Hasagawa as caucus chair is part of leadership, and so he was, of course, quite active in what was going on throughout the session. As mentioned, we unfortunately lost Senator Ramos, who had been a House member, moved over to the Senate in the 2024 election. there is now a special election. We'll touch on this a little bit later in the presentation, but a special election to replace him to fill out the remainder of his term. Rep. Hunt has been appointed to become Senator Hunt. She is running for that spot. And Zach Hall, who is an Issaquah County Council member and a former legislative staff member, was appointed to fill her slot in the 5th Legislative District.
So I was continuing the theme of recap here. This past session was a long session. So it began in early January and ended at the end of April. It was a budget session as well, in which the legislature considered their 3 budgets, which are the operating, capital, and transportation budgets. Over 2,000 bills were filed. I think that of actual bills is somewhere closer to 2,000 if you take out resolutions from that. And at the end of the day, just to kind of highlight the difference between how many bills are filed versus how many ultimately pass at the end of the day, only 431 bills passed this legislative session, and those that did not pass will carry forward next year as we finish out the biennium.
With regard to the budgets, as you all know and read about and heard about, it was a difficult budget situation this year. They started the session with what was deemed to be a $15 billion hole over a 4-year period on the operating side. The state legislature has to approve a 2-year balanced budget and a 4-year balanced outlook. So that's why they look at the 4-year process. After the revenue forecast came out in middle of March, that number elevated to approximately $16 billion over that 4 years. So a lot that they were dealing with again, while there was a lot of transition that had just occurred. The transportation budget likewise, and we have some more information on this in a moment, but the transportation budget had about a $8 billion hole over a 6-year period that they were dealing with. With regard to the number of bills that passed, that's about roughly what has happened the last number of biennia. The difference is it was actually a lower percentage, although the number was the same. There were more pieces of legislation introduced this year than we've seen in a first year of a biennium the past couple of cycles. So a lot more coming at everybody, if you will.
So just to recap as well, I know this is probably text too small for everyone to see on the presentation. It is available on the website, and I would encourage you to go look at it. It is our 2025 City of Renton legislative agenda. As you can see, we covered an exhaustive list of topics. And so I really just wanted to put this here to help frame that. Really what we're going to be focusing on today are our top 4 legislative priorities out of that agenda, which were behavioral health, transportation and regional connectivity, human services, and public safety. We also, as you could see by that document, looked at a whole host of other different areas, some of which were bigger topics in Olympia this year than others. You'll see the kind of more exhaustive list here, and correspondingly, each one has its own bullet points on positions that the city was authorized to take this past legislative session. So as we circle back to the budgets, as David just discussed, there was some pretty large shortfalls that the legislature had to navigate coming into this year, also coupled with negative revenue forecasts. And then, as we all know, higher interest rates, inflationary pressure, and then probably the biggest question mark remaining as we proceed into the summer into next year is federal funding uncertainty under this new administration. That certainly added another clog to the pipes, so to speak. So we're still navigating that and expect that to continue as we move forward. But even at the onset, there was quite a substantial hill that the legislature had to climb in order to get to those balanced budgets. So as David did just talk about, you'll see the 3 budgets actually in their legislative vehicles listed here. You'll see the size and scope of each budget, as well as the 4-year shortfall at the onset of session, and some just kind of high level points as to what was included in there. We'll take a deeper dive, but really these are some of the high level takeaways, particularly under the operating budget. I'm sure as you all had read the news, there was some divides this past session between the governor and the legislature on how to approach said shortfalls. The governor was pushing a cuts approach, while the legislature wanted to look at new revenue. So in the end, they kind of landed somewhere in the middle, $4.3 billion in new taxes, and that's over the 4-year period. Is that correct? 2-year period. So $8.6 billion over 4 years, as well as $2.7 billion in cuts. And then if you have any questions about the rest of that, we'd be happy to answer them. Renton specific, just wanted to touch on a few funding opportunities that came this city's way. Obviously, one of our bigger ones this year was the Legacy Square funding, to which we received our full request of $1.5 million from the 11th District legislators who sponsored the request. We also were successful in maintaining full funding for active construction on the I-405 to Renton, I-405 Renton to Bellevue widening project. Excuse me, that's a mouthful. And so that's about 90-some million dollars. And then when you add in full funding for State Route 167 corridor improvements, that's about 94 million and some change for current work being done. So really important piece that we had to navigate amidst budget uncertainty to ensure that work that's already being done is not further delayed. The one piece on here that we wanted to call out specifically where there was some, how do I put this, room to be gained where we weren't as pleased is that as part of the budget cuts that were contemplated within the transportation budget, we did lose our $2 million for practical solutions for the North 8th Street direct access ramp. That's not touching the larger pot of money that's been kicked out into the out years for the actual construction of the project. But if you remember, practical solutions was a process the city was undertaking with WashDOT to look at some preliminary work that could be done to reduce overall costs in the long run. So unfortunately, we did not get that $2 million. But overall, amidst what we looked at as budget uncertainties, we felt pretty good as we came out of that for funding for some of the key programs and priorities that we were advocating for this year.
If I could just touch on the Legacy Square funding, because that's a local project in the capital budget, that's one of those types of projects that it's extremely helpful to have, and you need to have the local legislators on board and going to bat for you. And obviously they did so in the sense that we got the entire amount that we had requested. And it's nice to have in the 11th District the three members working closely together, coordinating on their requests to make sure that they are taking care of the largest city in the district. And so I thank them for that effort and for that support for the project.
So we'll kind of break down the four main priorities and some of the big bills that touched on these issue areas. Perhaps one of the biggest pieces of legislation to come out of Olympia this year was House Bill 2015 that was sponsored by Representative Deborah Entenman from the city of Kent. And what it is, it's a public safety sales tax and grant program. This two-part bill authorizes a councilmanic sales tax that can be used, 0.1%, I should clarify, that can be used for officer retention and recruitment, public defenders, domestic violence programs, behavioral health, alternative response, among other different programs. It's actually quite extensive and broad as to how we could use revenue should the council ever contemplate putting something like that into effect. So really, really nice kind of momentum and progress achieved in achieving some of our goals in that space. On the other end of that as well is that the state authorized a new grant program that will be administered by the Criminal Justice Training Center or Commission. It's $100 million for cities and counties to apply for. And this does have some more defined usages, mainly for officer recruitment, hiring, and retention, to which it would pay for 75% of an officer's salary up to 3 years with $125,000 max for said position. Beyond that, the state also authorized speed limiting technology for certain drivers, and by that it's for drivers who have repeat offenses of high speeds. So really something to be looking for in the coming years as to how we can help utilize that for reducing some accidents and egregious speeding on our roadways.
This ended up being the lone local funding option that was provided to cities and counties. We did not, and we'll talk about this as well, but we did not get the property tax issue resolved, even though once again had momentum on that one. But this ended up being the lone piece that moved forward. And again, a lot of legislators that gave a big push on this one and really wanted to help local government and wanted to make sure that the help came in under a very large umbrella. And that's why you see the the broad issue areas that can be covered specifically under the councilmanic authority if you all choose to use it. So we were happy to see that, and frankly, for the first time in a while, see a very big piece of legislation like this move forward.
Under behavioral health and human services, I did also pull over House Bill 2015 into this space as well, because it can be used for co-responders and behavioral health personnel, as well as for local co-response services. So there's some good wins in that space beyond directly supporting law enforcement officers and supporting some of the ancillary programs that we all know go into not only public safety, but again, behavioral health and human services as a component of that. Beyond that, addressing some of the areas we did outline within our agenda, the state did include about $25 million for the Office of Refugee and Immigrant Assistance. It was not the full $60 million request that we initially submitted, along with a number of other jurisdictions across the state, but still nonetheless an important funding piece for a program that's particularly important at this moment in time. And then also there, included in the operating budget, there's separate funding for city alternative response teams. So just more funding that we can take advantage of to, again, pursue some of our goals as a city.
And I would say with regard to the ORIA funding, it was $25 million for 1 year. That was a little bit of a budgeting gimmick, if you will, because I think the expectation is to come back and try to push for additional funding in the supplemental budget for the second year of the biennium. And it's to continue the work that was done last year in the funding that came through, again, $25 million to help out folks who have come to the state, because it's a statewide effort, and did not qualify until we passed, some legislation was passed last year as well, did not qualify for initial funding. And this helps asylees, again, throughout the state. And specifically in the South County area, that was stepped up, certainly in ways we haven't seen in other parts of the state.
Lastly, for our priority areas under transportation and regional connectivity, there were a number of investments and policy changes in this space. One particular thing to note, as David discussed, to help bridge the budgetary shortfalls within the transportation budget, they did authorize a 6-cent gas tax increase, to which cities will see a increase in revenue share from that as well. So we should see additional resources come by way of that. They also contemplated some additional policy areas such as shared streets designation, and then also within the transportation budget as a whole, they included funding for safe routes to schools and additional funding for pedestrian and bike safety improvements across jurisdictions.
I would just add that, as a reminder, budget's going to affect July 1, 2025. These are 2-year budgets, so they last through June 30, 2027, but of course will be adjusted in the second year of the legislative biennium. So in 2026, in the short session, they will be adjusted again. On a side note, on some of the other bills we're about to speak to, unless otherwise stated, those bills will go into effect, become law on July 27th. Some have different dates, but generally it's 3 months after the session ends.
So as David just alluded to, there certainly were a number of other issues addressed in Olympia this year that fell outside of our top 4 priority areas, but still nonetheless were very important to the city of Renton, or will have substantial impact to the city of Renton and our community. One of the biggest areas of interest in Olympia this past year and years past, and presumably will continue to be a large area of interest within the policymaking space, is housing and land use. So there were a number of big bills in this space, particularly House Bill 1491, which relates to TOD zoning, or transit-oriented development zoning, particularly related to density. It's a very complex bill. It got lost a few times or two as I read through it, but it relates to density within these TOD areas and what cities are required to plan for and develop there. They also did include an amendment at the very end of session, creating a pilot program for the conversion of park and ride facilities that may not have full utilization for affordable housing, and kind of untying from the federal parking requirements and instead using affordable housing as kind of the metric and use there. They also touched on parking requirements, which is a substantial preemption of local control as far as how many parking spaces we can require for new housing developments within the city. It is now for a majority of housing developments, it will be half a space per unit or one space per 2 units. There's a complete exemption for affordable housing, and there's a formula for commercial developments as well. So those will be incorporated into our planning efforts moving forward, but certainly continuing down this path of new requirements from the state that we have to plan around and plan for. They also touched on a number of other kind of interesting areas, such as building conversions. They touched up on some of the existing law there. They also added in some new requirements and preemptions for childcare center zoning, requiring diaper changing stations in public restrooms. And then while this does not directly impact the city of Renton, I do know that this council has expressed an interest in knowing what goes on with this particular topic in the past, and that is residential rent caps, or what you probably hear more referred to as rent stabilization. The legislature did pass some language on that this year, and I will let David talk to the more specifics to that if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, just it changed as legislation often does. It started out with a cap of 7%. On the House side, the Senate went much higher, or allowed it to go much higher, and then the agreement that the House and Senate came to was 7% plus inflation up to 10%. So rent could adjust by 7 to 10% on a year-to-year basis for current renters. For new renters, or for somebody, if somebody leaves and the owner rents it to another person, there is no cap. There's some other restrictions too, but that's the gist of it, the big part of it.
And just to touch on really quick before we touch these last two big ones on the bottom right, under our environmental and sustainability piece, you might remember our support for the RAP Act in years past. This year, they finally got that across the finish line. So that is extended producer responsibility to hopefully push the state towards a free recycling program in the future. And this is one of the enabling mechanisms for that to get there. They also touched on some compliance pathways for the Clean Buildings Performance Standard. They extended paid family medical leave. They authorized unemployment benefits for striking workers, which will not necessarily have an impact on the city, but could potentially have an impact on some large employers within the community. Beyond that, they also required planning for pet sheltering during emergencies, anticipating FIFA coming next year. They authorized what are known as libation zones that cities can adopt within parts of their city to allow what I describe as more movement of patrons at bars and restaurants from one place to another without necessarily having to worry about finishing their drink before they leave. And then lastly, some of the bigger issues this year, they did not put in a preemption to local ordinances to address homelessness within our community. There was an effort this year, and presumably will carry forward to next year, in wake of the Supreme Court's ruling and grants passed. So nothing happened there this year. So under the current landscape, cities still have the power to create ordinances to that effect, but that debate will continue moving forward. And then lastly, as David touched on, while this year had a lot of momentum on the property tax cap issue, ultimately it did not pass at the end of the day. So no revisions have been made to that cap. And then lastly, just as we look ahead to 2026, there are a certain number of things at face value that will be under consideration, things we'll be keeping an eye on. Obviously, as we touched on earlier, the federal landscape between both funding and policy decisions will certainly have an impact here in the state of Washington. So that will be a big piece as we head into 2026. As well as economic uncertainty, fiscal restraint at the state level, revenue disagreements between the governor and the legislature on how to overcome some of these shortfalls, as well as resource constraints for popular programs and services at the state level. And then lastly, elections are coming up at the state level in 2026, as well as the opportunity for voter-led initiatives and or referendums.
I'll just touch on a couple of things on this slide. With regard to initiatives, there are a number that have been filed initiatives to the people, meaning the voters in November. They need a minimum of 309,000 signatures by July 3rd. Usually that means they want to get somewhere in the 450 range to make sure that they are valid signatures to allow whatever the initiative might be to go on the ballot. Initiatives to the legislature are due on January 2nd of 2026, and then the legislature would have to deal with those. You will recall 2 years ago, 2 sessions ago, there were 6 initiatives to the legislature, 3 of which were passed by the legislature, 3 went to the ballot. There are some changes that occurred to one of those initiatives or one of those efforts earlier this year as well. I think we're going to see some more responses on the ballot. With regard to special elections, again, touched on one of those that's coming up. There are 9 special legislative elections this year. That's, I don't know that there's ever been that many, certainly not in recent times. The 9 elections, there are 5 Senate races in the 5th. 4 of them are in King County, 1 outside of King County. In the 5th, 33rd, 34th, and 48th in King County, and the 26th over in the Kitsap area. And then for the House, there are 4 special elections in the 33rd, 34th, 41st, and 48th. The 5th House seat that I mentioned earlier that has been filled with an appointment came after the filing, after filing week. And so there is not, that's the reason there is not a special election in the House 5th Legislative District race. The last thing I would just say is we had this was a very difficult session certainly for the legislators, and dealing with the budget issues, dealing with uncertainty out of the federal government. That's going to continue. There have been rumors of the possibility of a special session, but of course that's going to be determined by what happens, what we see from the feds in the next couple months, excuse me, and also potentially revenue forecasts. Personally, I don't think that's going to happen. I think they have the ability to come back in January to adjust as the legislature always does, but one never knows. So it was a very tough session for them, and in turn for a lot of the programs, and in turn people who rely upon the state funding across the board in all walks of life. I appreciate all of you who came down to Olympia to work the legislature, work with the local elected officials in February. Those are fun days, they're busy days, but really appreciate your efforts as well, working with the 11th, 5th, and other legislators from around the state.
With that, Mr. President, or Mr. Mayor, I'm not sure how to refer to you tonight. That is it for our
That guy up there is fine.
We'd be happy to take any questions.
Okay. Questions? Councilmember O'Halloran.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your efforts on our behalf. It might seem like a silly question, but under transportation, SB 5595, what's a shared street?
So as I understand it, shared streets, and feel free to fill in anywhere I get this wrong, shared streets are designed to be more pedestrian friendly. So think of reduced speed limits, more pedestrian space. And so the state has authorized that because I believe there was a certain threshold for roads and speed limits. And I could be wrong, but that's my understanding of it.
May I ask a follow-up?
Sure.
So does anybody know where they take the space from?
I think the core crux of it is mainly the speed limits
Okay.
to make sure it's more pedestrian friendly. So I believe the example that was used during session was 5 miles an hour on the shared street. So slow vehicular traffic. And then if there is space for additional pedestrian areas, certainly can be taken into consideration. But the core crux of it is the speed limit.
Thank you.
Mr. President, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you to both of you. Thank you for your hard work. David, it's really good to see you. I have heard that it was a very difficult session, very complex session. Long timers are complaining. So when long timers complain, that means that it was very seriously how how hard you all have to work down there. So I appreciate your efforts to helping us with some of these very, very important issues, especially bringing funding and not having any funding cut from transportation, because that's a big deal. Say that I would like and will appreciate if both of you could explain better what the bill SB 5184, the parking requirements, means for local control. It's not for me, it's for the understanding of our residents that are watching today, why this SB 5184 parking requirement is limiting the control of this body.
I'll go ahead and just attempt to tackle this one. Thank you, council member, and thank you for your comments. We've seen over the past couple of years the legislature take a more, I'll say kindly, proactive role when it comes to local zoning issues in an attempt to help to create or look to create more housing that is needed today and will be needed over the next couple of decades as we continue to grow in the state and certainly in the Puget Sound region. One of the complaints or perhaps restrictions that has been brought up by developers and others is that the cost of developing housing is too high. So this is one way that the legislature has determined, for better or worse, a way to try to limit or bring down the cost of development by limiting the amount of parking for these various places. It's taking the authority away from cities, from counties, from jurisdictions that traditionally have had that authority and been able to set standards based on the local community's needs. But again, like we've seen in other sessions, the legislature has decided that this is an area that they want to be more restrictive in, and in turn are taking away your authority to work within your own community.
Thank you very much, David.
Councilmember Rivera, and then Councilmember.
Thank you, Council President. Appreciate it. Referring to slide 10, one great presentation. We always appreciate this follow-up to the legislative session. When it comes to the operating budget, transportation, and capital viewed on slide 10, I love the numbers provided here. 77.8 billion in total, including 4.3 billion in new taxes, 2.7 billion in cuts of services. How many billions in spending on new programs and services did we see out of this budget? Because it's the only one on here that we don't have a specific number for, and I would love to be able to compare and contrast the cuts versus the additions if that were possible.
Yeah, we can follow up with that information to you. I don't have that with me tonight.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, sorry, I don't have that either.
You're okay. No, thank you. That's why I'm asking. I appreciate it.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think my question probably won't have an answer easy either, but I'd be curious to know what are some of the possible funding things we could use 2015 money for public safety, human services, and maybe that's a question to go ask PD and human services to bring back for policy consideration, because it's great to know we have the tool. I guess what I'd want to know is what are some of the things here in Renton that we could spend it on that would help make a difference. So I know that's not what you two are up here today to suggest, but I'm just putting that out there. I would be interested in having that conversation to know how we could spend it. And then the same thing would go for the shared streets for the transportation division. If there's any candidates where we're looking for traffic calming, slower speeds that align with some of our regional trails network, I think that would be great to know.
Yeah, go ahead.
Councilmember, I'd answer your first question by just saying, again, it's a very broad umbrella as to what constitutes criminal justice or public safety under the 2015 legislation. And so the options that you would have, I think, would be quite extensive under that umbrella, be it law enforcement officers, be it fire, be it behavioral health programming, co-responders. I think my guess is you will have plenty of programs that you would be able to help support and fund under that heading.
And just the only other thing I would add to that, council member, is that these are issues that our staff is currently taking a look at. And so I would expect to see some more information coming out in the near future.
Can I also just add on that issue? Again, we talked about this a little bit, but the cities get a 0.1%, the counties get 0.1%. There's no sharing, so whatever you are imposing is the revenue comes directly back to the city of Renton for those services that you choose. In past years, there have been when there's been local options provided, often, not always, but often there's some sort of a shared mechanism or agreement between cities and counties. This is a little different this year.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. One is regarding the public safety, the HB 2015 that you just presented on. I think it's a great opportunity for our city to be able to access it. So I know the guidance is going to come out, but in terms of the grants, just to confirm, is this the program that does start in July, or is just the guidance that comes later in the year?
Guidance is going to take a little bit of time to come out from the Criminal Justice Training Center, and that will both. There are some guidelines that jurisdictions will have to attest to or show that they have completed certain guidelines in order to be eligible for the grant program, or for that matter, I believe for the sales tax as well. We think those are likely to be relatively straightforward, and there shouldn't be any problem reaching those or maintaining or attaining those guidelines. But it'll take a little bit of time to put that together. The bill goes into effect, I believe. Well, now I don't remember, but the work is already underway, and they're going to push pretty hard, knowing full well that the governments are interested in trying to move forward on the grant program as well as the local option.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Thank you. Let's talk a little bit about transportation and regional connectivity. I'm going to say in the state, but especially in this region, transportation is a big issue, right? We have always had the need to make sure that people spend less time in their cars, and we're trying to find all ways to be able to do that. However, the budget has always been very short, and even though we have passed this incredible transportation package, it seems that it's never enough for all the needs that the region has. Specifically in Renton, we have a lot of needs. Very happy that some of the major projects are still in the budget, because that is very important. But the SB 5161 that talks specifically about funding for safe routes to school. How is that funding is going to be redistributed, depending on the projects that every city has, or how it's going to be,
That's a grant program.
Okay.
That is funded with a dollar amount, and then grants are approved to help exactly what it sounds, provide safe routes to schools, be it sidewalks or providing safety in certain corridors. So, I mean, that's the short answer. It's a grant program.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to know. If we have to apply for a grant, or it's going to be just based on a project. You bring your project. And thank you very much.
Council President.
Councilmember Rivera.
Thank you. Councilmember Perez had me looking up the bill 5184, because I was reviewing it as well. And when it says that there is an exception for being by a big airport, I'm guessing Renton Airport does not count within that 1 mile radius of the airport exception, or would Renton Airport be included in that?
Be a good question for our attorney's office to look into. That's all I'll say. I don't want to speak out of turn.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'll follow up with our attorney. Thank you.
Councilmember Bell.
Yeah, I wanted to ask, and I'm reading the bill HB 1515 regarding libation and so forth. It seems like it's pretty much temporary until 2027 expiration, or can you help explain a little bit more about it? Because it is while understanding World Cup and all that, but there are safety concerns and things. So just kind of curious. I understand the intent, but then kind of the overall impact, right? Do you have
Is there a sunset
any
aspect of
details?
the-
Yeah, is there a sunset part of it?
As far as I understand, I did not think there was a sunset in there, but
Okay.
we can double check on that and follow
Yeah.
up with you. This wasn't one that we necessarily were on the forefront of advocacy for. I don't even think we took a position on the bill. I'd have to double check our records, but if anything, it was pretty minimal. So, like I said, it's more so knowing what's coming to the city of Renton in 2026 for the FIFA World Cup. One that we were interested in, but did not necessarily have a position on. So we'll follow up with you, council member.
Anybody else? All right. That actually was going to be my question, whether it was a sunset. I mean, it seems to me, of course, they kind of put it in place for cities planning as far as their activities in advance, how they might coordinate with the different establishments and things like that. I'd imagine at some point, unless some things have majorly changed, there's going to be why they wouldn't put a sunset aspect in it so they wouldn't have to come and revisit this and have it take up time. I'm not sure, but I'd be curious to know about that.
It's an interesting question, and as I mentioned, once we have some information, we'll be happy to follow up. I will just speak broadly to two concepts, I guess. One is that this is, as along with a lot of these bills that are in here, are issues that our staff is still working through and understanding what the potential impact could look like if we pursued such policies that were given, the powers given to us by the state. To your point about sunsets to libation areas and having to come back to it, if there is not a sunset, there are other states across the country that have similar programs. And if there is a sunset, they might come back to look at the long-term impact of authorizing that in perpetuity.
It looks like there is a sunset at the end of 2027, and Councilmember, you may have referenced that. So I think there is one. I think they want to probably see how this works out during the World Cup and then beyond, and then make some decisions after that.
If I may, Mr. President, for point of information on what you just asked. From my understanding, the outdoor services permissions would run through December 31st, 2026, and the civic campuses services would extend through December 31st, 2027. So there are sunset dates for specific areas within the libation zones.
Fair enough. We will find out in due time. Okay, thank you, Eric. Thank you, David. Appreciate it. Great presentation. Good. If it was like in sports, it'd be the fastest 25 minutes in legislature or something like that. But nice way to wrap it up, put a bow on it, and get us up to speed. So, thank you very much.
Thank you again for your time, and look forward to putting together the agenda for next year.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is the administrative report.
All right. Good evening, everyone. Mark your calendar for Thursday, June 26th, and get ready for a season of music, sunshine, and good vibes. Join us at the Kid Valley stage at Gene Coulon Memorial Beach Park for the Summer Concert Series. Concerts are a free, family-friendly celebration of live music by the lake. Each event begins at 6:30 p.m. Please visit rentonwa.gov/events for a list of dates and event information. Save the date. Renton River Days returns to Renton July 25th through 27th. This year's theme is Where Community Grows. Come enjoy music, art, food, and a family-friendly fun. For more information, including a full schedule of activities, please go to rentonwa.gov/riverdays. Information about preventative street maintenance, traffic impact projects, and road closures happening this week can be found at rentonwa.gov/traffic. All projects are weather permitting, unless otherwise noted. Streets will always remain open. That is it, sir.
All right, thank you. Next up is audience comments. When your name is called, please approach the podium. You have 3 minutes for your comments. You'll see the lights up front. When it turns red, please start wrapping up your comments. And remember, please address the council as a whole. If you require a response, please ensure the clerk has your email address. We have 6 people signed up on locally. I don't know if we have anybody virtually, but we'll find out. First up is Lennox Garmendia. Or maybe Garmendia. Did I say that wrong?
Armandia.
Yeah, I caught it. All
It's all
right.
good. Good evening, council members. My name is Lennox Garmendia, and I grew up in Renton. Thank you for letting me speak here tonight. I'm here tonight because I'm deeply concerned about the masked men who are kidnapping people from our community. These criminals show no warrants, no identification, and are armed. Some claim to be ICE agents or DHS. Some just commit these crimes in silence, refusing to offer any kind of explanation for their actions. There are now reports that bounty hunters are being paid to kidnap vulnerable members of our community and deliver them to the federal government. These are our colleagues, our neighbors, our friends, and our family. My concern is, what are we doing to protect them? In 2024, our city made a commitment to provide safe, healthy, vibrant community, promote economic vitality, and strategically position Renton for the future, support planned growth, and influence decisions to foster environmental sustainability and preservation, build an inclusive, informed, and hate-free city with equitable outcomes for all, in support of social, economical, and racial justice, meet service demands, and provide high-quality customer service with measurable outcomes. I think that we can do better on these promises that we've made. I would like to know what orders Renton City Police have been given regarding these kidnappings. Have any Renton police been deputized by DHS to carry out these illegal crimes on their behalf? What Mayor Pavone is doing in response to these crimes? Will he order the Renton City Police Department to protect the people of Renton? What legislation is being worked on in our city to protect our people? What does it mean to be a city in a sanctuary state but have not adopted the sanctuary city label? As someone who has lived in Renton most of my life, I want my city to do better. I want to see my city finally step up and adopt the label of sanctuary city and live up to the promises to all residents to build a hate-free city with equitable outcomes for all in support of social, economic, and racial justice. I want to see Mayor Pavone release a statement with a vow of non-cooperation. I want to see this governing body create legislation that actively protects all of our residents. I want to see this body create and pass a No Secret Police Act. And I want my city to make a public statement condemning these illegal actions. Thank you.
Thank you. All righty. Next, we have James Curtis.
Good evening, Council President, Council staff, and guests. My name is James Curtis. I'm a resident of Northeast Renton, proudly the HOA President of La Crosse, and I'm before you tonight to ask for your understanding, as we were supposed to be at the Council of the Whole, and there was an error on our end, and we apologize for that. So we asked that we could have a few minutes of your time to address the council. As many of you know, we were the proud recipients of a national award, and this award was presented to us in Florida. And this is a example of not just us as a community or as La Crosse, but this is an example of the council and staffs and city department's commitment to our HOA. And for that, we're very appreciative. And following my comments, there will be one of our board members, Sandy Taylor, who's going to give you a little more in-depth details. So on behalf of La Crosse, our 123 homes, and all the residents in the neighboring communities that we touch as well, thank you for your support, your continued encouragement of our activities, and we look forward to seeing you on the streets of Renton and La Crosse. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we have Sandy Taylor.
Hi, I actually am going to pass the baton over to my husband, George, who did an amazing job presenting on behalf of me. I had surgery where I couldn't fly to the conference, and George stepped in for me. He did such a wonderful job. I'm going to let him continue.
Thank you. We were nominated by the city of Renton, Remy King and others, for the Noose Award, Neighborhoods USA. We submitted, along with apparently many hundreds or over 1,000. We're not sure. That's what we were told. There were 12 finalists. We were one of the 12 of the other 11, they were all cities, like Glendale, Arizona, Indianapolis, on and on and on. We gave our presentation, which you've seen the hard copies. We're going to put that online so you can actually see it, how it flows. And we came in, we got third. The points that we tried to make were that we manage the details carefully in how we run our events. Sandy is the event coordinator and does a fantastic job. We have a high intensity of resident participation. We have 123 homes. We average 120 to 140 attendees, and we have very high volunteer hours, over 400 per year, split between 40 to 50 people. So anyway, we will provide that. I told you, Mr. Albertson, that we'll get that online and send that out. We have already been interviewed by the University of Missouri and others on this, so that's online as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wanted to also say one more thing, that the City of Renton and your neighborhood program, we greatly appreciate it, and because of them, it makes our events successful. So thank you.
Congratulations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that acknowledgement. And I believe Remy probably has the digital or the PowerPoint, but make sure to get that to us. I think it's a model for many other neighborhoods we want to duplicate, and we look forward to seeing more of that. Alrighty, next on the list we have Alice Lockridge.
Thank you. Yes, I'm Alice Lockridge. I live in Renton. I'm here today to speak about these public council meetings and the lack of total transparency. Transparency is the quality of being easy to perceive, easy to become aware of, or easy to understand. These council meetings are conducted both in person and on the internet by Zoom. But there really isn't total transparency. Some intentional things are being done that keep citizens from fully understanding what's going on here in these meetings. I have 7 points I'm going to make. 6 are requests. My first, and they're about transparency. My first 2 requests to the council are to count and inform all of us how many people are attending the meetings online, so as to make it part of the public record each meeting. My 3rd, 4th, and 5th requests are that the council count and show on camera and announce on the record how many guests are here in this in-person audience, so that as to make that number part of the public record for the meetings too. The people online don't know that anybody else is here. My 6th request is that the council leave the public comment microphone up here that I'm using on during the entire comment session, so that there's a passing on of information to the online attendees about the responses the crowd here makes to each speaker. And my last point, in a slightly different style of transparency, I want to make it be recorded that last week comments were made about some historical events 165 years ago that were stated from this podium and that they were slightly incorrect. Please, everybody note that President Lincoln's 1863 executive order, known as the Emancipation Proclamation, was not a law, and it did not free all the humans that were enslaved in the United States, and neither did Juneteenth in 1865. These 2 events only freed slaves in the Confederate States. It's clear to me by the admission that the speakers didn't know what finally freed all those in chattel slavery in the United States. All states were ordered to free their slaves by the passing, and then finally, months later, the ratification of the 13th Amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Ron Bensley.
Good Good evening, Council President, council members. I am a Renton resident, and I wanted to speak about one of the public speakers 3 weeks ago, John Houston and his brother. I know they've spoken to you many times. They presented many times on the eminent domain taking of their family's property in 1968. One of the takeaways I think all of us should have is the impact of eminent domain takings on the reverberation. It uproots lives of families and small businesses that are affected. I would encourage and beseech you, as part of recognizing what the Houstons have shared, that there be some training, perhaps at a council retreat, on the social impact and the human impact of eminent domain takings. It is so easy when the council has to, by law in private, make real estate decisions. And yet, ultimately, what get lost is the civil rights and the human equity aspect. A good source to start with, if anybody's interested, a study done by the U.S. Commission of Civil Rights 10 years ago, entitled Civil Rights Implications of Eminent Domain Abuse, and it specifically deals with the issues facing African American families during the time frame that the Houstons were affected. Now, I realize that the taker of the property was the school district. Their property might not even been within the city limits in 1968, but I would beseech you, out of a sense of justice, open yourself to doing some homework, because you don't know when you're going to get hit with some situation where you need to consider eminent domain taking, and be better informed about the human consequences, the human cost. Thank you.
And we have Sarah Becker.
Good evening, Council. My name is Sarah Becker. I've been a resident of Renton since 2001, on and off. But that being said, my grandparents did move to Renton in 1946, 4 generations of Boeing workers in my family. My mom went to Renton High School, and her siblings went to Renton High School, and they would be appalled about what is happening to Renton High School right now. And thank you for the lead-in on eminent domain, because that is obviously going on in Renton High School right now. We've been hoping this past year that the City Council would step in and use what leadership you have to make a deal, or at least guide the Renton School District to not use eminent domain on 32 single-family homes and the 8 businesses. But that seems to be going through. Not that it can't be turned around at this point. On that note, I did do some research. So the bond that passed in 2022 for the school was falsely, well, I won't say falsely, it was based on that the school needed 40 acres of land to be a high school. So I did some research this weekend, and the American Planning Association recommends senior high schools range from 20 to 30 acres, not 40 acres, and that depends on whether it's an urban or rural environment. So I did some research on some urban schools. So we'll start out with Renton High School. It is an urban school. It has 1,250 students, 23 acres plus 16 acres for the stadium. So that would be 39 acres it has. So it's already almost close to 40 acres. The next school I'm going to read has less population. Franklin High School has 1,237 students. It is on 9 acres. And I got this information off King County Parcel Viewer, so it is public record, the acreage for these schools. So 9 acres for Franklin High School, 39 acres, Renton High School. Ballard High School, skipping around. Chief South High School shares the high school with the middle school, so there's 2 schools on this acreage. It is 17 acres they share. Now, across the street from them, there is a 26-acre sports complex that is shared by the Seattle Public School District. Fourth is West Seattle High School, that is on 9 acres. Their population is 1,490 students. So again, more than Renton High School. Going to number 5 is Roosevelt High School on 10 acres, 1,528 students. Garfield High School, 9 acres, 1,641 students. Ballard High School, 13 acres, 1,645 students. Okay, so again, back to Renton. If you don't include Memorial Stadium, they are on 23 acres and they have 1,250 students.
I need you to wrap it up pretty soon.
You bet. Their student population has been declining in the past couple of years. It's not expanding. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anybody online for public comment? Judith? Okay. Thank you very much. All right, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. There are, excuse me, 2 items on the consent agenda. Would council like any pulled for discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
hearing none, and move that the council concur with the consent agenda as published.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. The council concur with the consent agenda as published. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Motion passes. All right, moving on to unfinished business. Councilmember Rivera.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
All right, Councilmember O'Halloran.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember McIrvin.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, the Planning and Development Committee has 1 report to present.
The Planning and Development Committee report is regarding the South King Housing and Homelessness Partners 2026 Work Plan and Operating Budget. The Planning and Development Committee recommends concurrence in the Staff and Planning Commission recommendation to adopt the resolution approving the South King County Housing and Homelessness Partners, SKHHP, 2026 Work Plan and Operating Budget. The committee further recommends that this resolution be presented for adoption at tonight's council meeting. This report is signed by the Vice Chair and member.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I move council concur with the Planning and Development Committee report.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that council concur with the Planning and Development Committee report. Any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I just would like to state as the representative on SKIP that we put a lot of work into this and that everyone is in agreement, and for all of our different partners to actually be in agreement to get on board on everything. We've done a lot of good work. We're being really responsible, understanding what's going to happen financially and economically in the coming years, and we're being very fiscally conscious of that. And so I would just encourage us to adopt this.
All right. All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, nay. Motion passes. All righty. On to Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Finance Committee has 9 reports to present. Melissa, are you ready?
I'm ready. The first report is regarding approval of claims and payroll vouchers. The Finance Committee approves the following payments: accounts payable vouchers and the total payment of $9,633,704.27. Excuse me, for a number of vouchers, payroll, benefit withholding vouchers, and 1 wire transfer. Payroll vouchers, total payment of $2,122,372.69 for payroll vouchers that included 717 direct deposits and 15 checks, and Kidder Mather vouchers totaling $32,482.82. This committee report was signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee report.
Second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that council concur with the Finance Committee report. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Okay, the next report is regarding a request for an additional capital project coordinator position. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the addition of 1 full-time equivalent FTE capital project coordinator position with a budget allocation of $176,242 to address the current backlog of capital and repair maintenance projects and support the successful delivery of planned facility improvements. This committee report was signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. The council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. The motion passes.
Okay, number 3. This is regarding the conversion of a public records specialist position to an enterprise content management, enterprise contact specialist 1 or 2 position. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the conversion of a vacant public records specialist position, salary grade A17, to an enterprise content specialist 1/2 position, salary grade A16 or A20 respectively, and to approve additional appropriations to fully fund the conversion. This committee report was signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. The council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Okay, number 4. This is regarding an agreement with Facet Northwest for Cedar River Natural Area Mountain Bike Park Project. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute a professional services agreement with Facet Northwest, Inc. in the amount of $56,065 for preliminary site assessment and community engagement scope for the Cedar River Natural Area Mountain Bike Park Project. Oh, that's a mouthful. The committee further recommends approval for a budget appropriation in the amount of $200,000 to cover this contract and a future contract amendment for design permitting for this project. This committee report is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Okay, number 5. This committee report is regarding a grant agreement with Homeland Community Trust. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the grant agreement and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute the said agreement with Homestead for the Willow Crest Phase 2 project amounting to $900,000 from HB 1590 sales and use tax funds. This committee report is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
Been moved and seconded that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
The next committee report is regarding a grant agreement with Wayback Inn and St. Stephen Housing Association. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve the grant agreement and authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute said agreement with Wayback Inn and St. Stephen Housing Association for the Steel House Townhome Development Project amounting $500,000 from HB 1590 sales and use tax funds. This committee report is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
The next one is regarding real property acquisition with Stacy Holdings LLC. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to authorize the mayor and city clerk to execute a purchase and sale agreement with Stacy Holdings LLC for King County parcels 302-305-9096, 302-305-9098, 302-305-9099, and 302-305-9091, and all other documents to effectuate the sale. The sale price, in addition to other associated closing costs, will not exceed $8,500,000. This committee report is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Okay, the next report is regarding the 2024 audit engagement letter with the Office of Washington State Auditor. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to approve and authorize execution of the agreement engagement letter for the Office of Washington State Auditor to perform the annual audit for fiscal year 2024. The estimated cost is $112,000. This committee report is signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
And the last report for the Finance Committee is regarding the renewal of the city's property, crime, pollution, and cybersecurity insurance policies. The Finance Committee recommends concurrence in the staff recommendation to renew the city's property, pollution, and cyber insurance policies for a period of July 1, 2025 through July 1, 2026 in the amount of $1,438,455.31. This is a 2.74 decrease over the previous policy's year's premium. To secure the best premium rates possible, the city's lines of coverage go out to bid every year through our third-party broker, Alliant Insurance Services. Rates are determined by market conditions, insured values, and the city's lost history. Upon approval by council, the city will bind insurance policies through Alliant Insurance Services by July 1, 2025. This committee report was signed by the committee chair and members.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report.
Second.
How about that? It's been moved and seconded that the council concur with the recommendation of the Finance Committee committee report. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Melissa, you did a great job.
Absolutely. Let's see, Councilmember Vaughn.
No unfinished business, Mr. Mayor.
All right. We have, we have legislation. We have one resolution for adoption and one ordinance for first reading. And resolution.
Resolution. A resolution of the City of Renton, Washington, approving the South King Housing and Homelessness Partnership 2026 Work Program and Budget.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move the resolution be adopted as read.
A second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that the resolution be adopted as read. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. And we have an ordinance for first reading.
An ordinance of the City of Renton, Washington, amending subsections 4-6-060D, 4-6-060F, 4-6-060J, and 4-6-060Q.2 of the Renton Municipal Code authorizing corrections, providing for severability, and establishing an effective date.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I move the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting.
A second.
All right. It's been moved and seconded that the ordinance be placed on second and final reading at the next council meeting. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Motion passes. We are on to new business. Councilmember Rivera.
No new business, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Councilmember O'Halloran.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I don't have any meetings to announce, but on behalf of the Community Services Committee, I would like to announce that our very own Jean Coulon Park was voted Best of Renton 2025 for Best Family Activities. So kudos to our fantastic Parks Department.
Absolutely. Councilmember McIrvin.
Mr. Mayor, the Transportation Committee that would have occurred on Monday, July 7th has been canceled.
Councilmember Perez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. On Monday, June 30th, there will not be meetings because it's a fifth Monday. And believe it or not, on Monday, July 7th, how come we're already in July? The committee of the whole will be canceled, and at 7 o'clock, we will have our regular council meeting here in council chambers. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councilmember Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Utilities Committee has a meeting on July 7th, 2025, on Monday at 6:15 p.m. The location is at the council conference room or via video conference. And we have one item on the agenda, which is emerging issues in utilities.
Thank you. What is the wish of the council?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Stay, say nay. Motion passes. Meeting adjourned.